This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
There's a concept that the Torah is the blueprint and the architectural plans of the creation and history. Even the way something is recorded in the Torah affects the way the world operates and the mechanism and dynamic of the running of the world. For instance, the Gemara Masechta Shabbos tells us that Vayhi ben Saya, those two psukim of Vayhi ben Saya, surrounded by the upside down nuns, are out of place, and the reason they're there is to separate between three consecutive perennials, because we don't want to have three consecutive perennials recorded in the Torah. So therefore we interrupt it with the parsha Vayhi ben Saya. So the Ramban explains, well, wait a second. They happened in order. Three consecutive bad things happened in order. The Mesoinanim running away from Har Sinai, the Hasafsuf, it happened in order. So how does it help to rewrite history and not record it in that way? But that's how it happened. But we learn from here, and this is an idea that's pointed out by Rav Simcha Zisel Broida in the Sefer Samderach, that it doesn't matter how it happened. It matters how it's recorded in the blueprint and the architectural plans of creation. And as the Ramban says, if it would say three Puranius in a row, we would chas v'sham become muchzuk b'Puranius. So we would have a status quo, a chazaka, that bad things happen to us. And therefore we can't record it that way, because the Torah is the document which establishes the reality of the world. Not only that, Rav Simcha Zisel points out, not only the way something's recorded in the Torah, but even when we read a certain thing in the Torah, also affects the reality of history. For example, we know that in the 13th century in France, the Shas were burnt publicly in the streets, and they made a Shelas Chaloim why this was happening. And it was Erev Shabbos Parshas Chukas, and Erev Shabbos Parshas Chukas, they saw in a dream that the Targum on the opening words of the Parsha of what? Da Gezeros Araisa. This is a decree from the Torah. And they realized that that day on the calendar caused that there should be a tragedy, and therefore on that day, on Erev Shabbos, Parshas Chukas, many continue to fast, many have a custom to fast, because that's the day of Parshas Chukas. In other words, the reading of Parshas Chukas establishes that since we say those words, Zois Chukas HaTorah, which is translated as Da Gezeros Araisa, that establishes that day is etched for history as the day of Puranius. So I was thinking in this vein, today on the Tainas Tzibbur, we do something that we don't do, as far as I know, any other time the whole year. And that is, while we're reading the Torah, we start by Echal, and we read in the one column, and then in the next Aliyah, we skip an entire column and we read on the third column. What's going on over here? You're not supposed to be medalig in the Torah, you're not to skip. But we have a special reason to do that on a Tainas. But as far as I know, it's the only time the whole year that we skip in the Torah portion. We're reading something, and then we jump over and we go to another portion. Something's missing! And the answer is yes. The reading of a Tainas Tzibur, where we read it and we omit something, teaches us that something is missing. And indeed, something is missing. Something's missing in us, and therefore something's missing in the world. We don't have a temple, we don't have Beis HaMikdash, but we're chasar. And the reading of the Torah indicates that. That allows us to perceive and understand the reality of the universe, and that is, there's something missing in our lives. If we're missing in the Beis HaMikdash, and we're missing in ourselves, then we're missing Torah also. Because Yisrael, Vayraisa, V'kocharichu Chadhu, so the missing Torah piece on the fast day also is reflective of the fact that something is missing in our lives, and it should cause us and stir us to realize that we need to be memale chesreinenu, we need to fill in and fulfill that which we're missing. May the Rebbeinu Shalom grant us the siyata d'shmaya to fulfill all of our chesreinos and make use of the fast day for its intended purpose.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.